Hello, I'm Eagle Gardens one on Instagram, and this is fucking talking shit with Eagle, episode 833. This should be a good episode tonight. We've got Country Roots. Chris, how you doing, my friend? Man, this has been a long anticipated one. I can't wait for this tonight.
Yeah, thank you very much. I've been anticipating this moment as well, and been watching a lot of your interviews over the years, and appreciate all the content and the consistency you've been putting out there.
Appreciate that. Did you bring anything to smoke on this evening while we conversate?
Yeah, I did. I got a little bit of some homegrown garlic crashers to smoke on, and then I got some black truffle that I might puff on, and then I got some of my Don's Breath rosin here um, that I can puff on as well. So I'll be sampling.
Nice, nice. I'd like to right off the top give you you know, a congratulations on a great event here in December. The Sun Grown event was I had a great time with that, and I've talked to a lot of people and it expressed my enjoyment that I had there at the Sun Grown Comp. It was a great experience. And I like the way you guys put it together there. Just a small type event with the dinner the following up, made it feel very intimate. You know what I mean? Gave it that, intimate breaking bread, just hanging out with some great friends. All in all, a great event. Probably one of my favorite from last year. So cheers to you for throwing on an amazing event here this last year.
Thank you. And yeah, that is the goal. We want to do something that's fun, that people can come and feel pretty relaxed and come and, sit. And the focus of the event is the plant. I really want people to be talking and conversing with each other about, different genetic projects and different things that they got going on. And I know that that's exactly what went down. A lot of people were mingling around and, checking out various people's things. And, a lot of good conversations, a lot of good networking, a lot of good overall just interaction, just trying to keep this community, fun.
Some of the best eats I've had in a while. Top notch. Top notch food at that event. It really was.
Yeah, thank you. That's I think, one thing that, cannabis connoisseurs really appreciate is a good meal too, especially, some of these long day things. They can tend to wear on you, but when you have different things to anticipate, like a nice meal at the end of it, of course, because that meal might send a few people home as well, but that's all right too.
Right now. Right now. Yeah, looking forward to next year's 100%. So I guess we should start this out in proper fashion. The way I always do is get to the core of this. Where did it all start? When did it all start? When was the first time either you seen the plant or consumed the plant for the very first time? Where did your love for cannabis start?
It's honestly a very early age for me. As too young of an age, I'll say that. Some grandparents that I really looked up to, as well as my mother, were cannabis connoisseurs. And, so they had it around. And so I remember being a very little child and having, some infatuation with this plant and what the adults were up to with this plant. Um, my mother grew it, and so did my grandfather. And so saw the plant, hidden in various locations, throughout my life. And I don't know. Even back then, I did know that it was something special, even though I knew it was something that I wasn't supposed to be involved with. But I definitely was very infatuated very early and started, actually consuming, at about 12, 13 years old. Um, and pretty much have been consistent ever since, honestly. Um, so it's been a long ride with it. Even in those young early days, we knew that you could just grow it, and we knew that you could put out some seeds and figure this out. And like I say, I was able to see some of my family growing it, and So some friends of mine, even early on, we were experimenting with seeds outside in the woods and, trying to cultivate a plant throughout the summer. And we had all sorts of interesting things that we used to do. Like we used to start our seeds inside of a speaker. You remember back in the, 80s, 90s, everybody had giant speakers, right? And so the thing was between our friends is to get these big speakers, and me and a couple of my buddies, we were starting seeds and little plants inside of a speaker in our bedrooms so that our parents couldn't find it. It was in a box and you could easily get, 6 to 10 starters inside of that speaker. And then we would bring them outside. But that is just a funny thing that we used to do.
Pretty ingenious. Yeah, I miss those big speakers. They sounded amazing.
Yeah, they did. They were definitely a part of the culture back then overall, just having a nice entertainment system and, a speaker setup.
Oh yeah, I remember my parents dragging them speakers right outside and setting them on the porch, just rocking the yard. One of the beauties of living out in the country, I guess. But good
Yeah.
time.
But yeah, and then, it really took off for me in my adulthood once I got my first house that I was an owner of, and a lot of people were growing cannabis at that point. And at that point, I was, able to set up my grow rooms the way I wanted to and had a little yard that I could start with some projects in. And, that's when it really took off for me. Before that, it was really experimentation and not knowing what the hell we were doing at all. But, this current enlightened day of social media and a lot of us interacting, through Instagram forums and things like that for the most part. And really just kind of motivated me to keep it going from there.
Back at this time, was there like names that went with the strains, or is it just kind of bag seed days still?
Yeah, well, I guess watching sorry, I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on his name, TGA Seeds.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Watching a lot of his stuff, he was very big on the super soil recipes and, watching, his different gardens back when he was with Miss Jill and, she was doing a lot of the gardening back then and just, watching those videos really, as well as Dragonfly Earth Medicine and the Nature Farmer was somebody that I was paying attention to early on and just getting a lot of motivation from some of these California growers, out in the mountains.
Very nice. Very nice. Do you remember some of the first strains you attempted? Can you tell me about your first grow there? I mean, a little bit about the seeds there, but what was your first real attempt yourself at growing like?
Um, yeah, I guess with home ownership, when I first set up my first home grow, what I really wanted to get my hands on was some white rhino, and so that was one of the first things that I sought out was some white rhino and some right around then the Girl Scout cookies were really just blowing up. It was like the first year of Girl Scout cookies, and so a lot of people were trying to get their hands on those types of crosses, and so it was some different cookies and the white rhino were really exciting for me back then.
You mentioned, of course, it's up cool and Dragonfly there. Was your first attempts at growing organic right from the get?
In the home grow, yeah, in the home grow. Back in the days in the woods, we would just do some dumb shit, whatever we could put together and take from our parents to put out with the plants in the woods. Um, but yeah, once I got set up, I was immediately on to soils. Organitron is another Michigan grower around here. He was doing some hand mixed soils and things like that, and he came over and helped me dial in some soil mixes early on and show me about some of the different amendments that people were using, and it really resonated obviously.
Yeah, organics is a powerful thing. So was it easy for you right off the get? I mean, not necessarily organics. Everybody thinks it is it it it's all simplicity, but it always isn't as simple of a process. Um,
Yeah, I did try a little bit of hydro in the early days too. And I definitely had more success with organics right away. Like the hydro systems, I just didn't enjoy the flower that I was producing at all. And so, it was a very short-term experimentation. And, I right away was like, yeah, the soil is easier to work with. Um, but I was still having some struggles, a lot of purple stem plants in the beginning. It was a fine balance of trying to keep them, properly fed. But, at that point, when you're first starting, you just kind of see all these tools around you. And, hydro shops, in some areas were really booming. And we had a couple really big hydro stores that had just, all kinds of stuff on the walls. And so you really, I think about early days as just too much experimentation. I was just using probably too many things and I wasn't using certain things right. And with organics, I've really learned that less is more and having proper timing and, kind of anticipating, these various stages of plant growth and, trying to cater to their needs at various times is more of the strategy, but that's still going to take some experience to get to. Um, but you know what I'm talking about. I don't know what happened if you can hear me, but the volume went out.
there you go. I
All right.
muted. I got
All
dogs growling behind me. I try to
right. That's a good call.
right on. So, at what point did you decided to start, supplying others with grow supplies and do the whole grow store, hydroponic store yourself?
Yeah, initially I just decided to start a grow store and cater to, soil and soil products. And so we sold several different soils and several different, soil products that were out there, rather than being like a full hydro store. And so at that point, I was really kind of thinking that I was going to just try to rep for other soil companies and, sell their soils. Um, and, in the process, I've tried just about every soil, that was around. And, just to be honest, I just wanted something different. I wanted something a little heavier and a little more dynamic and a little fresher. A lot of soils come, dry as a Pop Tart fart, and it's when you're trying to do organics in a living soil environment, that's working with those dry soils. It it's just a different process. I don't want to knock them completely because they can absolutely be worked with in many beautiful ways. It's just a process of working them through. And once it's completely dried out, the soil is different than something that was you know built to be dynamic and to keep a certain level of moisture. And so, as well as different amendments and ratios of things, and having pumice in it rather than perlite, there was some things that I was after. And so that led me down to just doing my own soil mixes. And initially I was just doing it at a pretty small scale and just advertising to some in the local community, and it just kind of kept growing a little bit. And just keep buying a little more materials and doing a little bigger volume. And, now I'm at the point where, I got a pretty good distribution system, at least amongst, some tight knit growers around Michigan.
Right on. It's not easy to set up something like that. Again, much respect to you. There's definitely a need for a good soil here in Michigan. We have a few people that are producing some good stuff, but the more the merrier. The way I see that, my competition is great, and you putting forth a great product yourself. Um, how has the response been?
Very good, honestly. working with gardeners, I know that there's, some pretty picky people, and last thing you want to do is, set anybody up for failure. That is the biggest risk, I guess, and the biggest fear. And, I've been very fortunate that we've been doing this a few years now. And I got a lot of great growers that, are really appreciating the soil that they've been working with and coming back and getting more, and giving me, a lot of respect. And at that point, you feel like you start to earn, a little bit of position, because, you're helping people up their game too, and when you're getting some different feedback, that's, the best thing. And so that's been very motivating for me and helped me to kind of just want to keep this going and, keep up in my game too. I try to take a lot of feedback from people, and I'm continuously thinking about how I can better, my practices and my materials and my blends, and just being open ears. Like you say, there are a lot of soils, and a lot of them can produce wonderful outcomes. It's for the most part how you drive each of those soils. And so, a lot of gardeners, they want to use various feed programs, different lighting programs, all sorts of different variables. And so, you know everything can be a little bit different. And so helping people drive something that, they really find value in is, it's very, it means a lot to me.
I believe cultivation super important for a lot of reasons. How has you what in your opinion, how has cultivation changed since recreation? Have you seen that tipping point where it's, kind of regressed quite a bit, or has it picked up since recreation?
It's it's definitely regressed a lot. There's just not as many people growing anymore as what there used to be. A lot of people did kind of put in the towel on, their gardening practices for various reasons. It takes a lot. It's pretty time consuming, and it costs money to run those lights and to get the room conditions dialed in. Not everybody can do that either. Like, some people, want to just set up a tent, and then they realize, oh, well, I need exhaust, and, wow, it's too hot in this tent. And so there's, various things. And I think that over the years, a lot of people dabbled with growing. And for one, they just realized that it's very hard to kind of, have all the variables come together the way they want them to. And so some people quit that way. And then, now just the cost of, people can get, some pretty bottom dollar flour and hash on the market. And so they can't even grow it for the cost that they can get it for. And so I hear various people telling me, hey, I could just go to the dispensary and, pick up this ounce of flour for $50, or even ounces of BHO are going for $50 in some places. And, growers can't compete with that. And I always tell people, especially like with the hash game, it's like, there is absolutely no way to compete with that. The only way they can put out product at that price is because, the commercial growers are putting out so much of it that, this is a cash crop at the end of the day. And if they have, hundreds or thousands of pounds of this, they got to sell it. They don't want to throw it away. They don't want to get rid of it. And so it's got to sell for something. And, they'll go down to $50, obviously, just to get rid of it. And there's a lot that could be said about that too, about what the quality of it is, this and that. But either way, for that price, a home gardener, when they look into the fact that they're going to have to put in, maybe $1,000 to execute a decent crop, they're like, wow, I could go buy, you know, 10, 20 ounces of flour from the dispo and save that money. But at the same point, there are a lot of growers who understand the value in what they're producing, and they can't hold that value, and they're not going to go and consume any of that cheaper stuff. We're not interested in that bottom dollar stuff. And so there is a big, pretty nice sized loyal group of growers that are holding pretty strong, and they're very dedicated to upping their skills and dialing something in, whether it's just like 3-4 plants at a time, or 12 plants at a time, or 24 36, whatever it might be. In Michigan, some people can do up to 72 or whatever. So
I think the people here will get tired of the cheap cannabis, to be honest with you. What's available at the dispos, just what's available in general. And they'll get tired of people picking their flavors for them. You know what I mean? There's too much great cannabis out there, and it's cannabis is pretty individualized, man. You can, find something that's amazing for you that just might not be available at that dispo.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think there's a lot of differences myself between a good homegrown flower versus that dispo weed. There's just no heart in it. There's no heart or high, longevity of a high in that dispo flower. It's missing the heart.
Yeah, totally. I mean, us home growers that are doing it well, we got people that come around and they absolutely appreciate what we're doing. I get a lot of people commenting, about, they don't find flower like this in the dispensaries, and, they really do appreciate it. And at some point, they want some of that in their life as well. And that's also why I, like to really kind of promote sun grown cannabis a lot too, because it's just requires less overall input for people to get started or to at least be involved in growing cannabis. Um, and so, you can, dial in a little spot in your yard, and, the sun does most of the work. So you don't have all the extra energy or, room control variables. Um, and, if you get set up with the right plants, a lot of it is the right plants, because some people, frankly, do not get set up with good plants. And, that is what that is. But if you get set up with some good plants and some decent soil, and, maybe a light little feeding program to do, right before flower and right at the beginning of flower, people can really knock some things out the park pretty easily. Um, so it's kind of a matter of, some variables, um, but you're right. There, people are coming around, and people are learning more and more about the cheap cannabis, and want to try to skirt around that a little bit too.
Right. So when you first started to dig into the organics, you did mention again subcool dragonfly, but were those who were some of the other people you looked to as far as reference as far as organics knowledge?
Um, it, just general research, I guess. Obviously, uh, paying attention to various social media figures, like, I saw Coots blend, he had the 33, 33, 33. And so that made a lot of sense, working with, you know, basically a third compost, a third um, peat, and a third perlite. You can make a really good soil that way. The other thing with my background, though, is I'm a geologist and educated to be a geologist. And so I've done a lot of environmental work around the state of Michigan, testing soils and water. And I also did a graduate research project on soil health in the Rocky Mountains, where I did an entire soil study throughout the Rocky Mountains, testing soil and talking about, soil nutrition, and what this means to plant growth, and what it means to weathering rates on the hillside. And so it's just kind of been a natural progression of, education and, culture, lifestyle, friends around me motivating me, and just being tuned into what people are doing, and interested in online. And, I'm just paying attention to various amendments, and, what's out there in the soil game, and especially the organics, and, natural amendments. Part of the, my geology thing is, I believe the earth has all the materials that we need. All the elements are there, and plants consume elements in organics. So it's just a matter of, bringing that to them appropriately. And so it's been just something that's kind of been building throughout my life, I guess, is the way I feel about it.
That's pretty awesome. I did not know that about you, and that's super awesome. Congrats on that. That's quite an achievement all in itself. So what made you, I mean, do you still do that full time in cannabis, all the other cannabis stuff in the part time or
No, I'm now I'm part-time doing environmental type work and then full-time cannabis stuff. Um, this was, even when I was full-time in the environmental work, I used to try to talk to the firm that I worked for about doing more work on soil health, like trying to promote soil health and how people could build healthier soils, because most of the environmental world is focused on contamination and mitigating exposure to contaminants, mitigating exposure to the plant and animal life and human life around us. So that's, the majority of what I was doing there. But I also saw a need, a lot of farmers that were dealing with some pretty harsh conditions. And, we're not really trying to, help them get to a better place. We're just trying to mitigate exposure again, which is a good thing to do. But I felt like there's a big link there that was missing, that a lot of companies just weren't providing. And, that, combined with the knowledge, just that was really what made me want to start Country Roots. I saw that, I could be, a part of that place right there.
kind of talking about the agricultural side of things? How has that fight been to kind of bring some of them back from just the normal MPK to thinking about organics in a wider, you know, scale on their farms and stuff? Are you seeing more and more farmers be open arms to the thoughts of more organic practices versus, just artificial inputs for farming these days?
It does vary. Like, there are definitely plenty of farmers that are interested, but it's a pretty small group of farmers overall, especially amongst the bigger farmers. Um, and so, working with a lot of the bigger farmers is actually a lot more difficult than I anticipated. I'll say that. There a lot of the bigger farmers are pretty well set in their practices, and some of them, are frankly fairly ignorant in what they're doing. They just kind of want to ignore the negative repercussions of their doing to the death. And it's like, if you want to try to point out that, this, what you're doing here is a detriment to the environment, and and people's health, and they'll immediately get super defensive. I'm not doing that, and I got legal rights, and this is my land. It gets to a pretty defensive place right away. And so it's hard to talk to people like that, and it's hard to, get through. But, there are a lot of people that are becoming more and more conscious, and conscious of, what we're eating and what we're consuming, and conscious of the environment around us and where things are coming from. And so, there's various farmers around. I got a guy right down the road from me who has, about 100 head of cattle and 150 acres of land, and they're all organic, and his wife does a bunch of plants, and they got all kinds of things going on, and we work pretty closely on some things. And he's about one of the biggest, organic farmers that I've seen around. Um, and then from there, a lot of home type people, are just really expanding their home operations. People will set up, a small little garden, and then next thing they're adding this and they're adding that, and starting to grow some food for themselves as well as cannabis. And so that's been more my focus for the most part, is trying to work with the home gardeners, and the people that want to try to bring some vitality to themselves in their home, and trying to come up with cost effective ways, and very rewarding ways that people can enjoy. And been making pretty good efforts there. And I figure as time goes on, there'll be more and more, people expanding to bigger operations and understanding this process of organics and regenerative land and things like that. And, we'll be bringing that to more of a scale in the future in Michigan. I really believe that.
I hope so, my friend. I really do. And you are putting in, an amazing effort the last few years. 100%. you've opened up a lot of people's eyes, and I hope you continue to do so. Tell me a little bit about the most recent post there. What's the foraging effort that you've got going?
Yeah, so I've been in the process of building out my farm and kind of creating an atmosphere where I can invite people here and do some different things. And this year in the spring, in May 18th, I want to have a little bit of a gardening class and a foraging type class. We're going to talk about a lot of different natural plants and natural mushrooms and natural fungus and natural soil building materials. And we're going to talk about how we can use these in the gardening program, how we can make different inputs, how we can, amend land and different strategies of cultivation and growing. And then I also have a guest speaker who's going to do some talk on mushrooms and, foraging for mushrooms. And then we're going to also have some people talking about natural medicines and, using plants for natural medicines. So we're going to kind of just try to bring this aspect together. And we're all working with similar things is the thing. And so it'll be an interesting class workshop type series, where people can, have a hands-on opportunity of doing some of the stuff that we're doing and seeing our strategies and how we're, making some good natural programs.
That's pretty awesome. Just for fungi reasons alone, there, uh, that's super cool because they so many medicinal benefits from mushrooms. As we learning more and more about, and not just again the psychedelic side of mushrooms, but the chaga, the lion's mane, stuff like that. That is, we know that it has great municipal values, but it can be super expensive, and I can't
Oh
help
yeah.
more nutritionally dense, just found in the forest firsthand than maybe produced in a lab or whatever and then found in your vitamins. I'm not so sure how a lot of that stuff sourced, and I'm starting to wonder, as I see more and more products available, I'm starting to wonder where it's all being sourced. What if that's one of those things? I live in northern Michigan. I actually stopped in at a health food store outside of Mile, and I was trying to find some chaga, and the lady's like, "It's all around here." You know what I mean? Just you could literally go out in the woods and find some, and I'm like thinking to myself, "Yeah, not yet." Not yet. I'm just not yet, not yet. So hopefully someday, but yeah. So I would love to be able to identify the proper mushrooms and be able to source that stuff myself. So,
Yeah, chaga is one that I work quite a bit with. I use it in some plant feed, and then I also use it in my composting a little bit. All my extra, products will go in there. So it's a great one to work with.
right on. I don't use it for them purposes. I use it for health purposes, more of kind of keep my sugar level. But it's awesome. How many different types of fungi do you use for composting purposes?
Good question. Quite a bit, we get collecting like oyster mushrooms, lion's mane mushrooms, um, chaga. Um, I One of the things that we do is I get mushroom blocks from mushroom growers, and when you put them and spread them in your compost, they will start to grow big, beautiful mushrooms all over again because they start feeding on that compost. Um, and so we get, all kinds of different varieties of mushrooms that come from, this mushroom growers, and that's a component in our compost. And so, like I say, they grow pretty plentiful. So I'll let them grow, and bloom out pretty big on the sides of it. And then once it looks like it's kind of done its course, then I just turn the whole compost pile on itself. And so the mushrooms go back in there, and they just keep breaking down within the compost.
Are there different types of fungus that will let you know how things are going? Or some that pop up in you, you know what I mean? You're like, yeah, shit ain't right. I shouldn't see that one.
Yeah, I mean, there's some like big woody mushrooms, like the trail or what do they call it, the railroad wrecker or something like that. It's just a big nasty button mushroom. Like if you see something like that, I don't think that that's a good sign. Um, but for the most part, you get, like the weirdest mushroom that you get in there is ink caps. I don't know if you're familiar with the ink caps, but it's like a little black, like or like it looks kind of like a psilocybin mushroom, just like a little black, small little cap, but it drips some ink. There's gray caps and black caps. But those are also beneficial. They look poisonous when you see them, but they can be beneficial if you eat them correctly.
So,
But I'm learning all that too. And, that's why I want to invite some of these other people over. It's part of this natural journey that we're on, and, educating each other on, different processes that we're working with and different things that we're working with. Or we want to talk about some different aspects of the plant that we're using in our everyday lives. And, and I also want to break down, food aspects of things, what, edible portions of it, and how certain things can be prepared, because I think that that is, very interesting. And, a lot of us weren't raised around like a plant life culture like that. And so, I was raised around, some sort of a plant like culture, but also very Americanized, and, been just trying to kind of dial back with our roots a little bit and understand, natural processes and, how nature works.
there definitely seems to be a huge upswing of people wanting to be more independent, more kind of off the grid, more self-sustaining these days, which is a beautiful trend in my opinion.
Yeah, we just got to slow down a little bit. I always say it's like, it seemed like the boomer age, it was like they wanted everybody to put on the suit and ties and go to work. And so, a lot of people experimented with that, throughout our lives and things. And some people really resonated with that, but some people didn't, and, that is not everything to us, but we just got distracted a little bit with that, suit and tie. And, the American dream was kind of like, enlightened in a sense. And now people are kind of realizing, that we don't have to live that way. And, we can do things a little bit differently. And ultimately life does boil down to, eating and what we're consuming and how we're living in things. And so from there we got to pay our bills, but we're all trying to figure all that out.
Can you tell me a little bit about your soil there? A lot of times when we've been talking about soil and organics lately, uh, one of the big things we've been talking about is watering, that proper moisture there. What was one of the things that's helped you kind of lock in your soil for the proper moisture for cannabis?
Yeah, that's a really good question. For the most part, you want to try to avoid letting your soil completely dry out. In organics, I think that that's, very important of maintaining some sort of moisture. You can let them dry all the way out at the end of the plant's life, when you're trying to completely finish it off. That's okay. But while the plant's growing, I think you want to avoid, ever letting that plant be too thirsty. If you ever come in and all the leaves are completely down, well, you've already screwed up a little bit. You just have to admit it. You can water it and hopefully the leaves will pop back it up, but you've definitely already screwed up at that point. So you want to try to not let it get to that point. And so you want to, try to water them before the plants want it. And so, paying attention to the moisture, feeling the tops with your finger, maybe picking the pot up and feeling how heavy it is. It's all pretty important because, sometimes it could just build a saturated pocket in the bottom, where it's ultra wet too. And at that point, you might want to let it dry another day or so. but there's, some interesting strategy there, and it's going to depend on, your root masses and things. And, if you're running with clones, particularly, there's always, a percentage of your clones that aren't drinking and feeding as hard as, some of the other ones that came out. They're just a little bit of a lag time. And so if you're watering them all equally, you might have a few that are overwatered because of that. But um, with my practices, for the most part, like throughout the flower cycle or throughout my veg and flower, I'm running bigger cannabis beds indoors and outdoors. So there's multiple yards of soil in this big bed. And what I've learned is you want to keep it, some sort of moisture to it at all times. You definitely don't want to let that whole bed completely dry out. And so I'm on like an every 2-3 day water schedule. And I'll go in there and trickle the water on, and I always hand water, because especially in the beds, you don't want any pockets of water. So I need the water to spread across as much of the surface of the bed as I can. Even in pots and organics, you want it to be that way. If you're always dumping it in the middle and it's not hitting the edges of the pots, and that's a problem. So being consistent with your water practices, and paying attention to, moisture levels, and, trying not to have to over water them is, pretty good strategy to try to figure out.
Is there a sweet spot for actual depth? You know what I mean, for a bed?
I like them to be about 2 feet. And the reason being is because the plant roots aren't hardly ever going to go all the way to the bottom. Like, for the most part, I don't think, unless you're really growing monster plants, that are going to, put out some really big root masses. But a lot of people run in beds, they're, not doing just one plant in that big bed. They're going to have multiple plants in there, and they, try to run them through. Um, and so that just seems to keep, some sort of more of a dynamic engine within the soil, so that it doesn't get completely exhausted. um, because when you're doing the beds, it's a strategy of trying to keep that soil alive. And you want, some bottom interaction and some surface interaction going on of some sort. And so I build the bottom of my beds actually, denser than what I will the top. And so I like to kind of follow like these Hugel type of practices and work with a 24-inch bed. And then I want to put like some charred logs down there. And then I put even some mycelium rich logs that I felt comfortable with, that were pretty soft and rotted, some smaller pieces, and just kind of put them down at the base of the bed. And then I put some river rocks. I'm a geologist, so I got, I had plenty of rocks around. So put some rocks in the bottom of there, and, put some extra leaf and mineral and, worm casting on the, just a little bit on the bottom, and then I just put all my soil up from there. And so it kind of creates this soil profile in this, dynamic bed. That's the way I feel that I like to work them.
Sounds right, to be honest with you. So when you're putting together a bed like that, I mean, what kind of microbes and stuff? I mean, what is the best way to, I guess, charge your soil with microbes and stuff like that? I heard you mention, again, like mycelium rich logs and stuff like that. But what's the best way and the best microbes to, kind of add in the beginning of something like this?
So between runs, after I harvest, it's going to be very important for me to get some fresh worm castings in there. And that's part of our soil building process, is I run worm farm as well. And so I'll get some of my fresh vermicompost in there, and, get some fresh worm eggs and some red wiggler worms between runs. And so that is really going to kind of change the dynamics of the bed. And so, yeah, I like to think about the plant cycle, throughout, what it's trying to do there. And so, when you're growing cannabis, it goes through the veg cycle, and then in the blooming cycle you want it to be feeding on more potassium and phosphates, and then at the end of the plant's life you're basically trying to not feed it anything. Hopefully everything's gone good, and you have the last weeks of the plant's life where you can just run with water only. Some people have some various tricks that they like to feed at the end of the life, and that's on them, but all they really need, if everything's going good, is water. And then you kind of let it dry out, that last week right before you cut it. I don't want it to go completely dry, but I want it to kind of dry. And so once I harvest that plant and pull it out of the bed, that soil is not really ready for some new plants right away. It you kind of dialed it back from being as active as it could be. And so between runs, you're going to want to get, like I say, some fresh vermicompost that, is going to have good fungal bacteria counts, as well as some beneficial life inside of that. There's going to be various nematodes and soil predators, and, maybe some row beetles and things like that, and some little soil mites in there. And so they'll immediately get to work and start, reworking the soil and any leftover biology in that soil. And obviously you have to water it too, and so working that moisture level back in there beforehand. But the vermicompost does quite a bit of action if you've got a good vermicompost. um, Also, I'm putting in there is bokashi. I like bokashi. I feel like it's a it helps as a good feed for the microbes and things. I water in with natural inputs, and so natural inputs is fermented plants, or jadam type plant feeds. And so those also have fresh bacteria and fungi in those. And so early on, it's a process of introducing a top feed that's going to get some good biology thriving again, as well as some liquid biological feeds. And so there's some various products on the market that are advertising, but for the most part, some good fermented plants and some compost tea type things is all you really need. From there, there are like powderized microbes that you can buy. They're fairly expensive. I would love to buy them all the time and put them in, but it's tough to justify, some of the cost on some of these things. Um, so, they're good to use, but you can find the proper biology, and you can get the proper biology from natural amendments as well.
What are your thoughts on transplanting, or is it possible to for a plant to take over an already established, like say, root system? I mean, can you like plant a seed next to a plant you're going to harvest? You know what I mean? Just kind of keep the cycle going and let it, will it attach to that the other root cycle, the root zone from the plant that you kill? You know what I mean? That you chop off at, say, the ground. Will that new seedling, uh, attach itself to the that old root system and take
Well,
off?
the old root system, they start dying right away as soon as you chop the plant. That root system is starting to die, and so at that point, the old root system is starting to decay back into the soil. And so the root system then is going to have nutrients inside of it, and so the new roots are going to find those nutrients from the old roots, and so they will feed off of those nutrients, as well as some of the microbiology is going to be feeding off of those old roots too, and helping them break down. And so there's going to be this interaction, this biological interaction between the old roots and the new roots, and the bacteria and the fungi that are working between them. um, and overall, the new system is going to completely take over the old system in a period of time. It seems like, I don't know. I've been doing this a while, so it's like I think that you could feel the old root systems are pretty strong for about like 3 weeks, into the new growth. But by about 3-4 weeks, post harvest, and you've got new plants growing around it, most of the roots from the old plant, are really soft, at least, you know, the main roots to stem and some of the bigger roots right by the stem, you might be able to find some of those and see them pretty well. But, you know, they break down, and, you know, by the time that next plant harvests, you know, they break down pretty fast. Once you chop the old plant, you know, it's a process of decomposition.
All right. Thank you for answering that question. Uh, so, do you have any advice for people that are looking to, start cultivating at home? Where should they start?
Yeah, so, you know, the living soil stuff that, you know, I promote the most is, you know, these beds. And the interesting things about the beds is, you know, you can get multiple runs out of these, is what we're talking about here. And so at that point, you can run them for years. And, you know, there are growers that you can find online that are, you know, running their beds 20 years now. Like, you know, I mentioned Dragonfly Earth Medicine. They've been growing in their beds for like 25 years or 20 something years. um, Steve Cantwell is another great grower that I've been following over the years, and he works out of Vegas in an indoor living cultivation facility. And I don't know where he's at, but he's got 20 something runs, you know, or maybe 30 something runs at this point. You know, he's been doing it over 10 years. Um, and so he's got a lot of experience, and he's just planting right next to it. And, you know, he's doing that on the commercial scale. And so that's a pretty big test compared to a home grower. You know, it's actually a lot easier for home growers. But so it is an investment up front. I'll say that. You know, you got to buy more soil in a bed and set it up. But once you get going, it actually saves quite a bit of money, because, you know, you're not having all the added soil costs, and you're not trying to keep up with quite as many feeds. Um, you know, it's just put example, you know, in Michigan, you could do 12 plants. And so if you're doing 12 plants, most people want to grow in 5 to 7 gallons of soil, you know. So that's about, you know, 60 to 75 gallons of soil. And so you're looking at, you know, 6 to 10 bags of soil, you know, each run, and then feeding those. And so every single cycle, you know, you're spending, you know, probably, you know, $300-400 on soil and feed. Versus if you buy a bed, you know, you might fill it with, you know, 400 or $800 of soil, but then you can get years of growth on that, and you don't ever have to buy soil, or hardly have to buy soil again. At that point, you're just topping it with, you know, some sort of dynamic compost or vermicompost, and then some sort of mineral feeds to kind of remineralize the soil. And so that seems like a lot, but all it is seasoning the top of the soil, kind of like you would your food, you know, just seasoning it so it just gets a nice light little coverage. And, you know, you're just, every time you water, you know, that's kind of becoming more and more part of the soil. And so between a plant's life, you know, I like to amend the soil, um, between cultivation. So right before I plant, you know, or put my clones in or start some seeds, and then right before flower, late veg, I'll give them a little bit of top feeding. And then like week 2 of flower, I'll give them, you know, a little bit of top feeding. So you're looking at like just 3 light little seasonings on top of your soil. And so at that point, you know, you're spending, you know, only $50 maybe, you know, on soil and soil amendments, or maybe $100, but, you know, you're not spending $400, and it's a little bit less work overall. And, you know, you could put an LED light in there. And so it, you know, the people that work it and understand the process, it absolutely saves you money, and it can make it easier because you got a bigger bed of soil, and so you have more forgiveness there too. When you put your plants in there to grow, those roots can go all over, and so they're able to communicate with each other and find the nutrients they need. You know, a lot of soil growers, if you put 12 plants in soil, you know, you might have a couple of them that linger and they don't do as well as the other ones. And you don't really have that in beds, you know, because they're all together. And so they're all either going to grow well, or they're all really not going to grow really well. And if you have everything right, you know, they all grow pretty well. And so it makes it easier, and it is cost effective. And so, you know, I've really been trying to promote that message to people, and it helps you stay in the game, you know, and feel very connected to the process as you're doing it, because, you know, you got this bed and you're going to keep it going for years. You know, that's the goal.
That's awesome. Uh, yeah, I believe cannabis draws you in 100%. I've been quoted as saying that it's uh, it not only is the plants not only cultivating or excuse me, I'm a little brain dead. It's been a long day. It not only cleans the
Right.
soul, but it cleans your soul as well. Organics, the plant does. Your journey into the soil. But it's a very enlightening spiritual system. The further you get into it as well, I think there's a lot of spirituality in the soil process of learning how things work in the soil as well, the synergy of it all.
Yeah, I mean, it's taken me, further than I thought it would take me. I'll say that. I've had some ambitions for some time, but I live, a lifestyle that I didn't expect that I was going to live some time ago. Um, in the terms of, for one, legalization, I didn't expect to be able to freely, grow this plant the way we do, and so that's very exciting. But it's also just changed, my lifestyle in the sense that, I've slowed down, certain things that I used to be bothered with. And, I'm more focused on nature and, my home and my family and, just regular everyday life. And, it leads into how can I eat better and how can I take care of myself better and, how can I, be a better steward of the land. And so all around, it's just, I feel like made me a better person. And, I'm very grateful for that.
What are some of your favorite types of cannabis? Uh, what is your favorite flavor profile? Terp?
Um, yeah, I like the gassy stuff. I like some things that have like some good nail polish type terps. Those seem to be pretty interesting. Those strong acetone type things that could come out, it seems to be very intriguing to me. Those strains tend to be pretty energetic for me, and so, I'm a pretty big consumer, so I smoke, all day long. And I like the strains that gas me up, and make me feel motivated to do things. And so generally strains like that, do it more so for me. People always talk about sativas and things, but as there's not a lot of sativas growing in Michigan. And quite frankly, a lot of sativas that I've had and tried, like, I didn't really necessarily enjoy the smoke as much as I wanted to enjoy it. um, and so hybrid plants have been kind of more it for me. And from there, I like to experiment with different flavor profiles. There's a lot of exotic type things that come out, and so I kind of see those as little treats throughout the day, and save them for something a little bit different here and there.
What are some of the things some of the strains you've seen that stand out to you? I mean, for Christ's sakes, you ran a cup. You've had to see a couple of things that has wowed you in the last few years. What have been some of those?
Um, it's some of the fruit strains. Back porch cherry is one that strangely rooted brought out to the market. I think that came from Fresh Coast Seed Co. I could be wrong on that, but I feel like that was something that Fresh Coast bred. It's a delightful cherry type strain that I really enjoy. Um, Another guy, Wild West Hash, did the uh, fermented fruit cocktail, and so that one there is also just a really exotic fruit dish. And it feels like a night. Both of those feel like a good dessert when you hit them. And so I've kind of been into that. I've smoked a lot of, like, even though I like gassy flour, and I really like GMO hash and some of those tougher hashes too, but I don't dab a whole lot. And so when I do kind of appreciate it to have, some flavor that lingers on my, on my palate for a little bit. And so, some of the heavier floral strains and some of the fruity strains, some of the exotic stuff that's out there has been very appealing to me. Um, Terp Wizard did a blueberry muffin that was really interesting, and a kombucha. I don't even know what the genetics were on it, but there's some different things that are intriguing. And I always say when it's called kombucha, and then all of a sudden it actually tastes like a kombucha, and you're like, wow, that good job. And so, I like the whole connection of what they were trying to do and what actually hit me.
Right on. I wonder if I've got that in when he was nice enough at one point to send over a nice little gift package of strains of his. I hope that one's in there because I'm a big kombucha fan. I love kombucha. I try to at least one a day. And
Yeah.
super healthy. I swear by it. This stuff changed my life. It really did.
Yeah, I like to drink kombucha as well.
I,
Uh,
I, I, I'm not even joking about it. I really believe that stuff changed my life in a lot of ways. My overall health, immune system. Uh, yeah, great stuff. I highly suggest to anybody if you're not trying some to try it, drink some, see how good it makes you feel. What made you? I mean, what made you try it initially?
um, I into brewing as well, and so just intrigued by the process of brewing and fermentation. I get naturally drawn to what people are doing out there, and the kombucha about like I don't know about 10 years ago is when kombucha started to hit my radar a little bit. My mother-in-law made it. Um, she was actually the first one that I saw making it. And then there's a company, Zend Out Kombucha, that's in West Michigan here. And they have, some drops around town, and they do some different flavors. And I really like what they're working with.
Definitely good stuff. I've at one or two events been able to find like a medicated kombucha, which I thought was pretty awesome. If you can combine two of my favorite things, kombucha and cannabis, I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, and you totally can. It's a process of fermentation. I haven't tried to actually make kombucha myself, even though I'm into the fermentation things. That's one I haven't experimented with on my own.
what got you into just fermenting? Was it, just through the K&F process? Was it brewing?
Yeah, I actually used to make beer. I still do sometimes, just not as much as I used to. Um, and so, I used to, dabble around with making craft beers and things. And then as soon as the K enough stuff came out, I was very interested in that, and it made a lot of sense to me. When I was a kid, I used to see um, you know, people in my grandparents, used to have a barrel, and they would put their plant scraps in there, and they had the water in there, and they were just doing like a basic bucket ferment feed like that, and that was all they really fed their garden. And so, when I started my home gardens, and it was about the time that KNF was blowing up and really took off, that that's the way I wanted to go with it.
It definitely is an awesome thing. I wish I would look further into the K&F gardening myself. The closest I've ever gotten is feeding my plants my bubble water, which they love. Have you ever
Yeah,
fed
that
plants bubble hash water?
Yeah, it's a great feed to work with. After you wash your plants, throw them out there, especially my outdoor plants and the outdoor beds that I have. I'll always dump the water, on those beds, because you can only use so much of it, of course, for one. But yeah, indoor as well.
Right on. Where do you see yourself overall taking this journey in cannabis? Do you see yourself always in soil? Do you see yourself spreading out into possibly breeding some genetics as well? Uh, where's the overall dream?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to continue to, live through example in what I'm doing. And so, continuously working my cultivation skills. And, I have ambitions of, rebuilding garden setups in the future and, putting new things together and continuously, upping my own crafting skills, you know, all the way from different genetics to, the different gardening strategies and, areas that I'm working with. Um, and the other part is just continuously evolving as a more rounded farmer as part of this journey that I'm on too. Um, is trying to have more actual food production, and so that's where I'm trying to head. Is just keep building out and keep expanding this farm project that I'm working on as well. And I'm working distribution with some of my soil and amendments around the state. But even there, it's I don't really want it to get a whole lot bigger than it has. I don't anticipate running some you know huge operation that keeps up with too big of a demand. I don't really want all that bother. I'd rather just focus on a scale and you know just keep providing and work at a pace that helps helps me live the life that I want to live.
It's admirable. It's admirable. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that truly is the goal. And just trying to help motivate people to want to be farmers is important to me. Keeping this lifestyle around and keeping local foods and local cannabis and craft operations and intrigued growers and producers and that whole culture is something that I value a lot. And I want to see that whole culture grow.
I agree. It's definitely a dying culture too. It's a dying and growing culture, all in one. To be honest with you, the culture that's here is stronger. You know what I mean? More tight knit, I guess would
Yeah,
be the way to say it. But in the same aspect, we're definitely losing a lot of people because, as we've kind of mentioned through the process of recreational cannabis, and it just kind of, you know, and that's one of the reasons I give you a lot of respect and a lot of props for continuing to do what you do. You know, it could have been very easy to get kind of disheartened and go, I don't want to be caught in a curve. You know what I mean? Then see the
yeah,
bottom fall out of it. You know what I mean? You've stayed pretty well true. You've adapted somewhat, but that's only to be expected if you want to survive. You know what I mean? But you still continue to try to put products out there, good products out there, and continue to encourage people to grow. And that's super powerful. And I got a lot of respect for that. Even as far as just putting out a quality soil out there, you know, uh, as I kind of get back into more growing seriously again, I had to take a couple years off, and now I'm getting back into it. And as I look around, I'm like, again, where the fuck are the grow stores? You know what I mean? All
yeah,
gone. It's getting harder and harder to just source good products for your grow. And it's kind of sad that recreational has pretty much killed the grow store. you know, but
yeah. I mean, at the earlier parts of decriminalization or legalization, however you want to look at it, but the earlier days, it was just more lucrative, even for a home grower. You had someone in your family that would probably support you a little bit and kind of help your financial endeavors. And so people were more apt to go into these grow stores and spend money. And it was actually a lot of money being spent in the grow stores in the earlier days. And that has just changed quite a bit. Even the people that are doing it, they're much more strategic and just not blowing money the way they used to on these things, and that's a good thing too. I definitely appreciate that, but just trying to strategize and anticipate certain things. You can't overcommit certain purchases, and get stuck with stupid inventory that you don't need. And part of my strategy honestly is that I'm feeding my own farm endeavors, like I say. And so a lot of my business is a means to get the things that I'm trying to build. you know and so I've been building out the farm that I'm on right now, which is a 20-acre piece of property that it's a pine. It's mostly pines out here, but a lot of pines and sandy soil, and so it's not great for gardening. And so honestly, I've already probably used a few hundred yards of soil out here to build. But I have a football field size vegetable garden, and multiple different bedding, big beds that I've built, raised beds with multiple yards of soil in them. And and I still want to build more, quite frankly. And so I've just, one way or another, it's worth it to me. That's all I got to say. In the day when you're not working or not making very much money, I'm still able to get by, and I'm still expanding things around my homestead, and that has made it rewarding for me to go.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah, I think a lot of people have started to do that. Kind of what they need and or want in life has kind of come back and been humbled a little bit. You know what I mean? I think more people should more people should slow down and kind of not chase the Joneses so much.
Yeah, there's a balance. Like, I frankly would like to see more part-time jobs available for people, whatever that means, so people can explore their creative side, but maybe they can still go work it for 4 or 5 hours and collect a paycheck. And I try to provide that for people that work for me, and try to have fairly loose schedule demands, and be very understanding if people have other things in their life that they have to do. Let's just keep good communication and try to work together the best we can. And I think that that overall mentality becomes much more of a helpful mentality, much more people oriented type of a mentality. And maybe there's something there to continuously work towards in the future.
Do you have any plant training advice? How do you work your plants? You want to share a little bit how you grow your plants?
Yeah, so I described about the soil beds and things like that, and I run a lot of clones in pots. And so what I'll do is I'll do either seeds or clones, and I'll run those in like 1 or 3 gallon pots, and I'll let them grow to whatever size, and then I'll put them in the beds. Like the seeds, I'll sex them out first and make sure that I have a female before I put them in the bed. I've never actually run any males in my beds yet. Someday I anticipate doing a breeding project in there, but it just, everything's got to come together to want to do that, and it just hasn't come together. Um, but yeah, so I'll select the plants that I want, and I'll put them into the bed, and then generally I'll top them one time, maybe twice. And then I just try to run, either a net or some stakes, and just grow them through. But for the most part, I don't like to, widen my plants too much, because then they need too much support. They start, really wanting to fall over, versus if you kind of do minimal topping, it tends to build a stronger stem, and the plants can support themselves more if they don't have too many heads and arms. And so it just makes it a little bit easier for me to run that way. And I can run through pretty quickly too. It's generally like a 3, 4 week, maybe 5 week veg period. And then I'll flip it right over and, be running right to flower.
Good advice. Good advice.
Yeah. So my overall grading strategy, honestly, is to be fairly hands off. I'm a pretty busy person, and I'm working a lot of different things around the farm and the property and keeping up with a lot. And so, I don't want to have to, cater to my plants all the time. And so, I set up these bed systems in these rooms, and, I don't have to attend to them every day. Some days I don't look at them at all. I'm just letting them do their thing. And, I come in and, and I'll have, some select days where I might need to defoliate a little bit, might need to top them a little bit, take some clones real quick. Other than that, it's just watering. And so, I'll come in there and water them. I'm in and out in 5, 10 minutes. And, it's, very, very hands off throughout the week. I'm only catering to my plants, honestly, for maybe an hour a week. It's very minimal. And so, but again, I've been doing it a while. A lot of people when they're early on, you get very obsessed with looking at them all the time and checking them and feeling like you got to do things, and you got to get over that. The plant's going to be the plant and grow. And if you put the variables and the amendments together, you got to kind of let it do its thing. And even when I am top feeding and doing different things, it's going to take a little bit of time for it to react. And so just trying to be patient and just, know that every couple of days I got to see what's going on. And maybe I need to do something. Maybe I need to brew a tea, or maybe I need to top feed, or, but for the most part, try to be hands free and just let the plants do what they want to do.
It's good advice. Most people do try to overthink it. I think in general, growers try to change max yields, max terps, max. I think a lot of times they should, let simplicity sneak in.
Yeah, if you want, the best results just come from good room conditions. I grow in a couple of different rooms, and I grow year round. And so, I noticed that, if this room during the cycle, it was just consistently a little bit too cold or a little bit too hot. Like, I'll notice the difference in the way that that plant grows versus, if I know that the room conditions were pretty much spot on the entire time, it was clean and I didn't have any issues, and, good temperature and air control. For the most part, that's what makes the plants really stand out superior. um, and so that's a process of dialing that in, and that's why tent grows can be a little bit difficult at times if they're getting too hot. If the plants are flowering in 90 degrees on a regular basis, and especially above 90, intense, it can easily be 100 degrees if you're not paying attention. And so that's going to just produce a flatter plant that you're not going to enjoy quite as much. So trying to do what you can to not let your plants overheat or underheat is very important.
As a geologist, can you explain that, why that is to me? Because, a plant that is grown outdoors can easily take those temperatures. You know what I mean? But we take them indoors, and now we're like, you know what I mean? But we wouldn't need, again, an outdoor sun-grown plant, and at the end of the day, there's a lot of people that would say that sun-grown 90-degree pot better all the way around. You know what I mean? But we take an indoor garden, and it could that be a normal situation. Now we're like, no, dirt bud. What why is that temperature swing? How can it work outdoors and not so well indoors?
I think it's probably a lot to do with the synthetic lighting. The light's just too intense with those hot temperatures. The sun is also very intense, but it's the proper UV index that plants appreciate for the most part. And so I think it's a lot to do with, the synthetic lighting in those temperatures, that gives it the problem. But that's a good question. I guess I've never really fully, heard that one discussed or thought too much about that. But you definitely do not get, as robust of a flower if the room is just too hot. You really want to try to avoid that as much as you can. Even when I did tents, that's why I'm kind of bringing up the tents. Like when I grow in tents and the lights are on, I need the doors open. I can't. I've never been able to just completely leave it. Like it's if it's like 60 degrees in the house and and it's not going to heat up, then you can get away with it. But in the summertime, I just can never get away with a closed tent. You can't put an air conditioner. You can, but that always seemed a little silly to me too, to put an air conditioner in a tent. Um, but the outside, it's like you think about where the best cannabis grows, and it's in the mountains of California. And I don't know if you've ever been in the mountains. I haven't been in the mountains of California, but I've been in mountains in other states. And when you're up at them high elevations in the summer, that UV index is tough. You could get burnt in like 30 minutes, or pretty short exposures sometimes can leave you with a little bit of sunburn. And it's hot in the summertime. But they growing some really nice cannabis. Some seems like some of those grows have less powder mildew issues than we do in Michigan, because it's so hot and dry. um, and so at that point it seems like the cannabis is really soaking it in. You're muted again.
Thank you. Yeah, I've always ran with my tent doors open, just for so many reasons. I just the stagnant air, you know what I mean? Even if you've got fans in there, it's just again the same moving stagnant air to where I could have, you know, replenish at least ambient CO2, fresh air all the time. Yeah, I've always had to, by choice, run with my tent doors open. You know.
Yeah, I always tried to open them, and then especially when it's flowering, you got to shut the tent, and so I'd close them when they're flowering at least, and let them flower, and then open them up. And I'm actually thinking about firing up a few more tents again. When I like to do seed hunts, tents are kind of nice because it gives me a little more separation. And I find that tents are pretty nice for seeds because it helps build that humidity in there, and they like that humidity, in that younger stage of their growth. And so tents can build some, you can get some pretty lush plants started in tents.
Well, I've always enjoyed the tents in my scenario anyway because of being able to operate, like, say, multiple rooms, each scenario, perpetuals, different flower stages, in a small room, being able to divide that one space up into multiple stages of growth. It's always been a plus. A plus.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're, a cannabis smoker, and it's a pretty regular medicine for you, frankly, you need multiple harvests. You can't, it's tough to wait 12 weeks for a veg and a flower cycle. At least it can be 20 or more weeks if you're growing slowly. And so that gets pretty painful to wait for. And so having some sort of process where at least every 8 weeks or every 4 or 5 weeks you have a harvest, that can be a pretty, that's where I like to be, honestly. That way I have a consistent supply of some fresh plants coming down. And and I just feel very happy about that.
You prefer fresh cannabis versus a cured flower?
Yeah, I like it, within 6 months, I guess, usually. Sometimes, it definitely can enjoy beyond 6 months. But within a year, especially if I notice that, in jars, getting on to be about a year old, I'm certainly trying to utilize that one up. Um, and it might just be because I'm a perpetual grower too, and I'm not trying to waste it. I want to just keep things going.
What are some of the things that we can do here in Michigan to help keep this caregiver market alive and keep it kicking?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think the most of us just try to remind people of protections that we have. This caregiver program has made life a lot more comfortable for people in this recent age of growing. um, I certainly have not forgotten, how uncomfortable it used to be, in the past, and some of the risk, that was associated, raids and things like that, in, like the 2010, 12, even like the beginning of legalization. There was a lot of people getting rung up, and a lot of different things happening. And that was also a scary time of legalization. And, people have calmed down a little bit. And, I think it's important to keep, you know, the caregiver and the patient and, the medicinal aspect of cannabis alive. Otherwise, it could take a criminal turn again. And, that's just a huge shame, in my opinion, and I think a lot of people's opinion. And so we don't want to see that. And the other thing is, people just realizing that if you want to have, choice of flavors, your own choice of flavors, and working cultivars, and, having a connection that, trying to draw people to growing this plant, helps keep it alive as long as people are growing it. And, I know grandparents, aunts, uncles, younger people, all sorts of generations of people, that enjoy this. And so trying to spread the plant and trying to encourage people to grow. If you got a neighbor who's curious, ask them if they want a couple clones, you know, help them out, get them set up, and, trying to just continuously encourage people to want to grow. And like you say, it is pretty addicting. And, a lot of people that connect with it, it keeps leading them down, some sort of a rabbit hole, at least to want to keep doing it. Even if it's just sun grown outside, if you have a yard and a place in your yard that you can put a few plants out, some people, that's all they do every year, but they really look forward to that. Every year, that's a big part of their summer, and they, really look forward to it. And like I say, it can be pretty minimal effort outside. Some people have really good soil already in their yard, and so they plant right in their yard. And, you hear people, they did nothing, and some people get that lucky. And some people, put a few things at it, and, they do well. And some people don't do well. Um, and frankly, that's part of it too.
I'm actually trying to get people to give away clones on 420 this year. Kind of get people to get more in an effort to get more people growing in general. One of my biggest thoughts to that is, it being close enough and nice enough, even if they didn't want to set up a grow room in their house, they can still, like you said, throw a couple plants out in the yard and maybe start their love for the cultivation of cannabis that way, and maybe it'll just kind of keep growing. But instead of like passing, packed seeds and whatnot, I really think that if you pass somebody a clone, and we're at a point in time to where I think you could almost set up a table at a light and just run them to a car with not take any money. You know what I mean? On 420, just here you go grow it without getting in any kind of trouble. You know what I mean? Or serious
Yeah.
anyway. And but it being a live plant, I think most people, I take a little bit of heat for this too, won't just let something sit and die. They'll water it. They'll keep it alive. They'll pass it to a friend or something, or they'll just make room for it out in the yard. And you know what I mean. But I
Yeah.
think it would be a great way to get people started by, and again, just belly it, put it right in their belly. Don't even ask. Just boom, 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 boom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't think they would end up in the garbage. I think they would all go to good use. But hopefully, you'll jump on that
And
bandwagon.
that has to be about the only strategy is just that people want to do it. If people want to do it, then it's hard to take it away from us, you know. But if people don't want to do it, then it's pretty easy to take it away from us. And so, it's up to us to teach people to want to do it, and our strength is in numbers. I think for at least maintaining plant count rights is kind of what I'm getting at. You've seen, and there's discussions, and things happening all around the country in various states, about plant rights. And Michigan has been very, very fortunate to be able to hold on to some plant rights. And I think that we need to just hold on to that as best we can, and the way to hold on to that is to continuously encourage people to want to grow plants and remind them, hey, you can grow 12 plants out in your yard, and here's how you can do it. And people, especially if they have that guiding hand and someone that's going to help them out and make it seem a lot easier for them, then right away, they're pretty intrigued. And sometimes it's just a couple of plants, but um, whatever, I think it's the more people that want to do that, like I say, it's just harder to take it away from us at that point. And as soon as the news starts talking about taking this right away, it's going to just rile up more people and say, wait a minute, we've been doing this for a while and I don't see what the problem is. What's the big deal here?
I agree. I agree. It's nice to see some of the older folks take on some cultivation these days, and them are also people that we need to get on that are willing to go to the polls and fight as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in the 90s when I was a teenager, um, everybody that grew had like these secret closets, where they could pull the back wall out and, growing in really tight spaces. There were some growers that, were, filling basements and things like that, but it was pretty few in between that were actually doing like a room or something. And so it was extremely secretive, and it's just very nice to not have to be that secretive, and we can grow bigger plants and treat them a lot better than these little confined spaces, and having to worry about who might see them you know
It's hard to believe them. The what were they called? Those things back in the day. They're almost like fish tanks with lights on them. Like a gray. What were them things? I can't they think of the name right off the top of my head, but they were pretty much like a little gel you'd grow in. They're right on it's right on the tip of my tongue. It's been about like 95 earlier. You have an idea what I'm talking about there.
I can picture it, but
I can't think of the name right, but yeah,
it's like
it's
a
amazing.
terrarium of sorts.
Yeah, yep. It was just like that. And yeah, I'm not how little fire, but yeah, good fire was grown in them things back
Yeah.
in it's yeah, we're blessed. We're blessed these days to be able to just outright grow intense rooms and not in just those little things anymore.
Yeah, and to be able to have like a spot in your yard, you know technically you want to put up a cage and have some sort of secure system so people can't just walk up and grab it and take it freely. But how awesome is it to be able to set that up and to be able to have something like that if you have a home, to be able to do that. That was something that I looked forward to very much, was getting a piece of property and, being able to set these gardens up of my own. And
Phototron, chat, nailed it.
there you
Yeah,
go.
I don't know why I couldn't think of it. It's been a fucking long ass day. So, where is their soil available these days? How can they resource some of your soil if you're here in Michigan? Can they get it outside of Michigan? Will you ever be outside of Michigan?
Yeah, so I do mail it. And mailing soil is crazy because it's so, it's a lot of weight, and so it really honestly costs about the same amount of money to mail it as it does for the actual soil itself, because that mailman obviously doesn't want to lug soil around. But they'll do it, and you can mail it, and there are ways to, drop ship and things like that. And if people only have a little bit of soil, it's, not too bad for those people. But then in state, I run deliveries all over the state. And then Grow Green in Ann Arbor just picked up our soil, and they have it available there. And Horizon Hydroponics in Grand Rapids and Kalamazoo, and Growers Outlet in Byron Center. And I'm working on distribution now. I want to find a few stores around the state. The goal is just to be, basically within 2-3 hours, around the state, which is, maybe I get in, 8 to 10 stores, would be fantastic, that's kind of my goal this year, is to find a few more, try to find something up north, something maybe over by the Thumb area, something up in the UP. I already got a place in the UP, but it's also got to be, just business savvy for me. It's got to be the right type of setup and delivery to not waste my time. And so there's strategy involved. I can't just drop it in any shop. It's expensive to run it around and things like that. So um, I'm not too pressured on it though. Like I say, I enjoy being small scale. I've embraced that over the years and tried to not, over promote myself, or, over try to sell myself, because, that's just going to put me in a position that, I might fail or might not be able to keep up with. So I've just tried to, operate at a natural pace. And, I've just been, building up over the years, and, opportunity. Luckily, like we say, it's a pretty hard time, but, I'm in a pretty good place that a lot of people are switching to, soil type gardening, or at least starting soil type gardening programs. And so it's not a booming business, but there's people buying it, and people supporting it, and people interested in it. And, I'm having regular discussions. And so that keeps business moving. And that's what I'm trying to do.
Right on. Right on. I can appreciate that, but a good product is a good product. And if people, you know what I mean? I can appreciate uh, staying small, but if, people want that soil, I can see. One thing that you said there that kind of reminds me a little bit about myself there is wanting to kind of save a little bit on the smaller side and keeping quality key. Are you one of those folks like myself that are just a kind of afraid to uh, let people in on the chain of command there? I
Oh
know.
yeah.
There you go. Yeah, I did woodworking, and I do furniture and stuff like that. And at many points, people are like, you should just, put these out, just build these. And I've always thought, man, what if it got too big and I can't make them? And you know what I mean? I can't. I just can't pass the buck, and know it will be just like I would do it. So. That's
It is tough. It's hard. You can see, when you care about something, as much as, I care about what I'm doing and what you cared about with your wood projects. It's like, and you see somebody come in, and you can kind of tell right away that the care is just not the same. And, and people aren't paying attention to the variables, or they don't even really know, or are not really trying to understand it. They just want cookie cutter things to do. And at some point, I could put that together, and I could make it, pretty cookie cutter. And so, yeah, we'll see. I don't want to completely, obviously shut the door on expanding business, to more market. Um, but at the same point, it's like fairly ridiculous to be running, thousands of yards of soil. I've seen some pretty big soil operations, and, that type of an operation just really isn't intriguing to me overall. Um, and so maybe with my flavor, and my style, I'll find a more comfortable way to want to scale that up. But, it takes what it takes. And, you know, the hands-on nature and a very caring nature and a thoughtful nature, you know, seems to be very important to me.
You seem to be a guy that takes a lot of pride in what he does. Even when you were doing the store there, the brewer, all that, you put a lot of passion in what you do, man. And I'm glad I finally was able to sit down and have this chat with you. I was actually going through. I'm very sentimental, especially about this project. This is my woodworking project these days. You know what I mean? I'm
Yeah.
very tight reined about you know what I mean, the way things run and all that good shit. I'm super anal behind the scenes about shit. But I keep everything super sentimental. And I still have the first page of like lined up people, uh, guest, my first piece of guest list. And I believe you were like the 49th person I asked to be on the show. That early on, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I only was shooting for people that I, had some type of respect for. So even 4 years ago, brother, I had respect for what you were doing, and the passion that you were doing was pretty apparent to me. And now 4 years later, through all the bullshit, the epidemic, you know what I mean, to see
Yeah.
you still standing firm and with a good passion and a good heart for what you're doing is pretty awesome, my friend. Congrats to you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you as well. And, like I say, I've been following your efforts as well and your show over the years. And, I'm sorry I didn't come on sooner, quite frankly. I've had a few excuses, but
No
overall
need,
just chugging through.
brother. No reasons to be sorry. You're out there chasing your dreams and putting shit together, making shit happen. I have, that's all good shit to me. I will stand and wait for people that are chasing their dreams, and you know what I mean. Not too many people lay it all out on the line and chase their passions and are willing to go out there. I heard you mention too, just the creativity aside. I can, thank you for that. Just thank you for that, because that's something I've talked about a lot lately. Is people having to be caught up in the grind. I think there's a point that's where we've lost it, man. People just trying to survive, keep that roof over their head, going into that 9 to 5 job in a factory or some bullshit. They don't even, they just hate. They just fucking hate. And
Yeah.
they've lost their creativity or their just drive to just wonder why this happens, or you know what I mean? Just chase any kind of thought in their head. They can't do that because they've got to go to bed, because they got to fucking go to work, do a miserable job or any much. But just to hear you, take that into consideration, you know what I mean? That's pretty fucking awesome. We need like many, many more of you. You know what I mean? And this world would be such a better place. I'm not just trying to blow smoke with your ass. I'm serious, man. We need a lot more people like you that understand and think like yourself. You know?
Well, thank you. I'm trying to help motivate some more too. It's like I say, it's a big motivation behind me is, trying to keep this culture and, this type of lifestyle alive and, fresh things growing around us. And, quite frankly, I'd like to see a whole lot more great things done with society, but I want to see a revitalization, to our way of life, whatever that means, and that means we got to clean some things up. We're going to have to get honest with, ourselves about some of our behaviors and some of our habits and some of our, ethics and things like that. But, you know, I think that I think that is kind of happening. That's kind of what, this social world is doing, is it's, open people up to see, what life is outside of our little bubbles. And, it's all motivating us in various ways. And so, I just want to be a part of this positive, positive movement. And, I feel like promoting soil and farmers, is very important right now. It shouldn't be as important as it is either. It should just be, you know, very standard like it used to be.
I hope you keep doing what you're doing. Keep the sun grown cup. Keep that model. That's an awesome model you got going there as far as a cup, and I hope that it becomes a very traditional thing here in Michigan. Because that was my first experience. What was it, the second year of the sun grown? Right.
Yep.
I hope it's been. I had a good time. I'll be back next year. That's it for sure. I enjoyed so many aspects of that. Just the smaller kind of venue, kind of, yeah. I was actually talking about it last night with Tim Blake, telling him how much I kind of enjoyed the whole thing, and it kind of seemed like as I was talking about it, like he was almost taking some notes. To be honest with you. But I appreciate that event, and I like the way that as you pushing forward, the small, more intimate kind of learning uh, experience that you have coming up too. I think they're both great ideas.
Yeah, it's important to keep it for the people. It's for the event the way I want it to be held. And a lot of bigger events kind of, chase corporate dollar too. And I don't blame them for doing that. I understand why people do that. But at the same point, as soon as you do that, it does start to change it from the people, and it's not really for them anymore. Or maybe it is, but I don't know. Just, the vibes can change a little bit sometimes, and people feel left out or whatever. And so having this style, an open style event where everybody can come and kind of show off what they're doing and talk about what they're doing, it seems to be very important. And I think that that's what people kind of appreciate about, the sun grown.
Definitely a different effect the sun grown was, and thank you for letting me sit on that experience and judging some of that flower there. Uh Definitely was a different effect. I'm definitely more used to more of an indoor flower, and all that sun grown flower definitely was a different high. All in all, definitely more sedative, more couch locked. I sat through and judged a few cups last year, and the sun grown was took me the longest. Took me the longest and was a little harder to go through. Man, a lot of weed naps. That process. But, yeah,
Yeah.
so, very good flower this year. Pure style elementaries. Good stuff.
Thank you. Yeah. I have a good time doing it too. And I, genuinely enjoy seeing growers excited about what they're producing, and, hearing, what they are excited about and how they did it. And, all these things are just intriguing to me. And I think it's fun to follow as a culture, and the genetics are continuously ongoing, and people are always talking about, genetics and what's hype. And, it's just fun to bring that. That's what's best about competitions, if they come together correctly, is that, you can get a variety. Sometimes it gets to be a little bit too competitive too, and I guess I understand that, but in my mind, I just want it to be about the plant and, the overall um, enjoyment of the plant and try to acknowledge it, as a whole.
Can't be
And
easy.
competitions, quite frankly, they deserve some criticism because it's, who's to say what's better in a sense, different people are attracted to different things, and, you put a panel of judges together, and that's the decision, and it's pretty straightforward. But at that point, there's definitely going to be other plants and things that, other people thought were better, um, and that's where the extra knowledge comes out of it.
I thought it was cool too that you guys kind of did like a judging and then like a people's choice, kind
Yeah.
of checked. You know what I mean? The judge thing to see if a little bit that they people agreed with what the
Mhm.
judges were, thinking a little bit, I guess. So,
Yeah,
it's
and it puts a different, that's what I mean, and that even put a different set of winners. Like, the judges awards were different than the fan favorite awards. There was some overlap, but it wasn't the same results, and that's just some different palettes coming in. And so it's kudos to everybody who had, some positive remarks. And so that's why I tried to, hit up the people that were in the top, the top like 20 entries. I messaged all of them and said, you got really good remarks from the judges, and I gave people feedback like that. And so, it's rewarding to know that, you at least received good remarks.
That is awesome. Again, I appreciate the way the whole thing was ran, and I hope it continues to be an ever growing, thing as it goes on. Can't be easy to put on an event like that.
Yeah, it definitely, I'll say it was very burdensome in a sense that, you take on, various stresses trying to collect everything and put everything together and make it right for people. And then, there's a lot of different opinions about, what should be done and what shouldn't be done and how to do this and that. And if, it's hard to make decisions sometimes when all that, noise is happening. So, overall, just want to try to keep it as simple as I can and try to keep it as open as I can to people. And hopefully we can continuously encourage people to, new people to want to, take participation in it, in the years to come, and maybe grow it up a little bit and, involve it a little bit more even. But we'll see, it's up to the people, and hopefully I can, keep organizing more help for things like this, and having some team effort and things like that and more coordination, and that all comes with time, and experience. I am nobody trained me how to, showed me how to do this. I just been to different events and, talk with Nick and, friends, and and just communication, trying to see, what do you think about this, what do you think about that, and trying to make it fun. And, hopefully each year we can have a little new twist, or, some new something exciting, I guess, to kind of keep it evolving and make people continuously interested in it.
Yeah, very nice. Well, I think that should be easy. I think that'll be keeping people interested. I think that part of it should be easy because it is a fun event. And I know everybody that have participated in this year's will want to go back next year. So there you go. I mean, how much more interested do you need than a repeat of, this year? You know what I
Yeah, no, you're right. Like you say,
mean?
we definitely did good attention and good participation in the event. And so at that point, I know that, there's good interest for it. So just a matter of keeping it going. And I definitely, I hope we can keep it going too.
Well, I think we've come close to the allotted time there. Uh, I don't want to go too much over there. I know you've probably had a long day, and I'd like to say some for a second episode. Hopefully sometime sooner than 4 years.
Yeah.
But do know this couple of things before we end this. I want you to know that Zoom link that I sent you is always good to come hang out in the Weed Nerd Worlds. Weed Nerd Worlds are Monday and Thursday, 9 o'clock to 11 p.m. Anytime you want to come out and hang out, smoke, talk with us, let us know where you're going to be, what you're working on, you know what I mean? Where your soil's available, it doesn't matter. Yeah, it really doesn't matter. Your
Yeah.
reason for why you want to come hang out is yours. At this point, you don't need an invitation anymore. If you want to come hang out, just come hang out. Other than that,
Cool.
I would very much look forward to doing a second one-on-one. Very much so. The other thing I'd like to get from you before we go is a silly little soundbite that I'll use as a commercial for this episode at some point. Basically, what I'm looking for in my words would be, hey, this is Eagle, and I'm on fucking talk shit with Eagle, episode 833. You can say whatever you want before, after, as long as that's kind of in there somewhere. I'm good. And I am ready for that. Right? There you go.
Hey, this is Chris with Country Roots. I'm on fucking talking shit with Eagle, and we had a great conversation today, and I appreciate you having me on here. Talk about soil health, plants, and future of young farmers in Michigan and across the nation. And we want to keep this vibe going. So thank you for tuning in.
Good stuff, my friend. And I do. I seriously I have a lot of respect for you and all the shit you do for this community. The knowledge you are starting to, I think you're just starting to open up, to be honest with you. I know you've put out a lot of stuff into the community in the past, but as far as like shit like this and, wanting to put down the serious education, I feel like you're just starting to seriously open up to, what you're going to do. So, I look forward to the stuff you have ahead in the future, and I can't wait to see where your cannabis journey takes you, my friend.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, I've been a little hesitant to, step too hard into the public spotlight on things. I'll just say that. And um, now all of a sudden, I feel like it's important for me to do that. And so, I'm trying to come out of my own little comfort zone a little bit and, get out there and talk to people a little bit more and, get on the internet and talk to people that, I don't get to talk to on a regular basis and start spreading this message and sharing what I love. So the motivation's changed a little bit for me. So thank you.
Great source of knowledge, and I can't, thank you enough. No, seriously. With that being said, to the rest of you guys, I appreciate your guys' time as well. Please share this episode, tell a friend about tonight's show. And most importantly, don't forget to do something nice for somebody. Random acts of kindness do save lives. And with that being said, we are out of